Okay, next we're going to go into the finishes tab. So the main purpose behind the finishes tab is to give your customer information about the finish that is associated with a part. So the finishes print out on customer specific documents like the quote, a shipping order, certificate of compliance, as well as the invoice. So, like I said, if you have multiple parts with the same part number but they run on different finishes, that can help the customer differentiate. If the customer has a requirement of upper or lower spec, this is where you record that information. So, and you can have unlimited number of finishes. So if it goes through multiple processes, you can list those all here. We also have a percent of sales. So the way that works is in the previous versions, you could associate a part with a specific department sales account. Whereas in the new system, you can do it for multiple. So you're not limited to just one department. So let's say that I want to associate 60% of sales to yellow chromate, and I want to associate 40% with anodized. And you can see that the system automatically calculates the price for you. That's just a visual cue to let you know how much you're charging per piece for that particular finish. So you can say, oh, whoa, that seems a little too low. Maybe you could change the percentages or up your total part price. We also have mil spec here. So if you customer has specific specs that you need to follow, you can say, this is as per, that spec. And again, this will print out on the document so the customer can see it. So we also have other information, the department you want to associate the sales with. We have time, current, and we have multiple ways you can store time. You can either store time as fractions of hours, or you can have it broken up into hour and minute portions, however you want to see it. Okay. And we have some other notes here, such as color, specification, process ID. And actually, speaking of process, I would like to go into it. So again, this is mainly just for a customer's purpose. They can see the finishes associated. It's also useful for reporting. You can say, show me parts that are part of this finish. Whereas the actual information about how to run the finish would be in the process. So if we go over to the process, you can see that we have a process ID assigned and then process details. And you can see that in the process we also have the rich text where you can highlight different things. So if you have information that is important, like let's say I want to make this temperature stand out, I can set it to red and underline it.
Now, is it possible for you to create and store commonly used processes and reuse them in the future?
Yep. So that's actually the purpose of the process ID and description. So you can see these are both drop downs. Usually customers would search by description, so you can give a process a good description that you can follow. Process ID is our number that's generated by the system. When you select from an existing process, it will actually replace what's already there. You can see that these are the steps needed to run the part. So this list is maintained under JobWare's lookup processes, and you can see we have a list of predefined processes here. You can quickly look them up. The way this works is that you create a generic process. We call it master process, which is the bare bones information for how to run a finish. When you select it in the part, you can fill in information or change temperatures or times as needed for that process to work with the part. Or if you leave it alone, then the process is still linked to the master process. If it doesn't become part specific, then any changes to the master process would also reflect in the part file. So that both are useful approaches. And there's some useful tools here for maintaining processes, such as we have copy process. So if you're creating a new process and you know that there's steps that you want to use from an existing process, you can copy them over. And we have process revision history, which is useful for certification. That might be ISO or NADCAP. It's important to have a total history of changes to the process.
So once you define the master template here, you should be able to link the process back to a particular quote.
Yep.
Is that correct?
So like I said, you select and it pulls in, and then once the steps are pulled in, you have them available in the quote.
Mm-hmm. Now, can we customize the columns, add additional columns to process?
Yep. So you can see here we have modified grid settings. What that allows you to do is by default we have one column which is details, but you can split it up more. Like let's say you wanted to create a sub step, and you wanted to have that say, rack instructions. Well, you can't enter the data here, but you can set up the columns. So let's say I do that, and under substep I have, rack instructions, and then down here I have packing instructions. So you can create however many columns you want. Mm-hmm. Well, up to a limit of 11, but we find that most customers use 2 or 3. By default, when you print out the process, it comes with an initial and date column. So you don't need to add those unless you're creating your own custom, in which case you can. And then another thing about customizing is you can change the captions too. If you want to say op number, or detail steps, or whatever you want to say.
So what about the common steps that we use? Can you save those steps and then quickly recall them and build up your process that way?
Yeah, so you can do that from the master process. So if I'm creating, sorry, I went to the wrong module. If I go to a master process, and let's say I need to make a change, I want to add a step, I can say insert text from procedure file. And you can see we have a list here of steps, and when I pull it in, it pulls in the text. So you can maintain that list yourself. So if you have information that you type a lot, you can save yourself a lot of typing and just pull it in.
Great, thank you. What about the ability to track labor costs, direct labor, estimated labor time for each operational process?
Yeah, so for each process, we actually have a lot of information that you can track. And a useful way of looking at it is actually by going into the detail view for that process. So the detail view lets you see inventory usage. So we do allow you to track inventory usage, maybe chemicals, maybe packaging materials, whatever you want to track cost-wise. We also allow you to track estimated labor. And again, you don't have to fill all this information in. There's a lot of information here. It's just whatever you need to enter in order to come up with your cost. So you could enter in, for example, pieces per hour, which would help you figure out how many hours a particular job you think would take to run. And from that, you can come up with a good cost estimate for labor. Our system does include an add-on module to track actual labor, and we do have reports that allow you to compare estimate and actual for a profit and loss standpoint. Okay, we also have the ability to attach a picture for each operation. So you saw some of the pictures on the previous screen. So you can see that we can actually attach those on a per operation basis. So if the operation's masking, you can have a picture of what the mask looks like so that the operator knows exactly how to do it without any additional training. So you can see that the process is really what drives the operator on the floor. You print out the traveler and it comes with the operation detail.
Save this.